All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. After a trip to the Western Conference Finals last year, the expectations were high heading into this NBA season for the Dallas Mavericks. But now the Mavericks have been reduced to the role of spectators as they fail to even qualify for the play-in tournament this season. Things simply never came together for Dallas as outside of a 7-game winning streak in late December and early January, this team has been up and down all year. Dallas is just 9 and 17 since the trade for Kyrie Irving, and I'll touch on that in a moment. The Mavericks are missing Jalen Brunson, who left in free agency. They're not as good defensively as they were last year. Uh, People are going to question Jason Kidd, the head coach. People are going to question Nico Harrison and Mark Cuban in the front office. There are so many question marks, and I mean a litany of problems for the Dallas Mavericks. And I want to start with the fact that they're missing Jalen Brunson. And of course, Jalen Brunson was the floor general for this Mavericks team last year. You could make the case that Jalen Brunson might have been the leader for this team as well. But nonetheless, we know about the offer that Dallas had on the table. Obviously, Jalen Brunson got a lot more money than that when he signed with the New York Knicks. Mark Cuban has gone on the record to accuse the New York Knicks of tampering with Jalen Brunson. We know that the Knicks hired Brunson's dad, Rick, as an assistant head coach. Excuse me. But it's also a scenario where it's like this: did the Knicks possibly tamper? Yeah, but for me with the Mavericks, I'll say this: you had more than enough time to make it right with Jalen Brunson. As far as you could have taken care of him while he was under contract with your team, and now it's a scenario where you know what, you don't appreciate the person that you're with until you allow them to walk out the door. It's kind of like that, the girlfriend who wants, the boyfriend to propose and she gives him an ultimatum and he just scoffs at it. And you know what? She goes out there and finds somebody that's willing to walk down the aisle with her, and the rest is history. And guess what? In this basketball marriage, if you will, for the Dallas Mavericks, they had an opportunity to take care of Jalen Brunson. They had an opportunity to go out there and give him what he wanted. The Knicks saw his value. You've seen how his productivity has increased for the Knicks. You've seen how the Knicks' productivity overall has increased since Jalen Brunson put on the blue and orange. So honestly, I'm not going to feel sorry for the Dallas Mavericks in that sense. And because of that, when you allow somebody to walk out of the door, you get desperate as far as trying to go out there and replace them. We saw Kemba Walker come in this season for the Mavericks for a cup of coffee. It simply didn't work out. We saw Dallas obviously go out there and make the trade for Kyrie Irving. And Dallas is just 9 and 7 since Kyrie. And some of that I'm gonna put on Kyrie, but also some of that I'm gonna put on Luka Doncic because in a very short period of time, Luka Doncic has shown that he cannot play with other star or superstar type players. And I say that because Luca is a guy that needs the ball in his hands to be effective. Kyrie obviously is a guy who needs the ball in his hands to be effective. It didn't work out prior to that when Dallas brought in Kristaps Porzingis, another trade that they made with a New York team, this time the Knicks, before they shipped him out of town last year to the Washington Wizards. But nonetheless, you have two ball dominant guys in Kyrie and Luca. It ain't working out. Dallas is not as good defensively as they were last year. You want to talk about the Mavericks last year defensively. They were one of the top teams in the NBA in points allowed. This time around, they're a middle of the pack club. And then, of course, people are going to question Luka Doncic's leadership along with other things. First and foremost, Luka Doncic is a scorer. He is not known for his defensive prowess, if you will. Granted, I know he can average more than a steal a game, but Luca's not a guy that's really gonna, pull up the shorts and, really sit in the chair, if you will, and go out there and play hard nosed defense. You had a guy like that in Finney Smith, who you traded, to the Nets to get Kyrie. So at the end of the day, I feel like Luca is going to be one of those players where he's not going to be able to play with other stars going forward. He needs to be a guy who has role players around him, shooters, guys who can play without, getting the ball consistently in order to be effective, guys that know how to run the floor, guys that can get to the basket, guys that can protect the rim, all different positions, but nonetheless, this is what the Mavericks are going to need going forward. And you had the perfect point guard, if you will, in Jalen Brunson for that because Jalen Brunson was a floor general. He was a ball handler. He could knock down the occasional outside shot, but also he took that pressure off of Luca. He knew how to set Luca up, and more importantly, he knew how to play off of Luca Doncic. And now you don't have that. Kyrie is not Jalen Brunson, and Kyrie is a phenomenal scorer in his own rights. He doesn't have to take a backseat to not that many people in the NBA right now, but nonetheless, it's not meshing, between the two of them. And overall, this season, this Dallas Mavericks team never gelled. There was no cohesion from the word go. And there's a lot of blame to go around for that. You look at Jason Kidd, and throughout his coaching career, whether it was a brief tenure with the Nets, several years with the Milwaukee Bucks, and now with the Dallas Mavericks, for the most part, he has been an up and down head coach throughout his NBA career. And typically, when he has a good season, he follows it up by another bad season. And it was very interesting with Jay Kidd's post game press conference last night, as far as why the Mavericks sat some of their key players when they still were mathematically alive for the play-in tournament. And Jay Kidd basically cleaned his hands of it immediately and said it's an organizational decision, which means that's coming from above from the likes of Nico Harrison and Mark Cuban. And of course, what did that lead to? Now the NBA is investigating the Dallas Mavericks for sitting those guys because it could fall under the category of tanking potentially. So you look at this Dallas Mavericks organization, and this place is in disarray. We go back to the scandal from several years ago that rocked their front office, and now you know you're just looking how the last year or so has unfolded for this team and this organization, and at the end of the day, it really is not good. The Dallas Mavericks, I'm not going to say that they're at the crossroads. I'm not going to say that they need to push the reset button, but I will say this is a Dallas franchise that needs to figure it out because Luka Doncic is one of the most talented and young players in the NBA. He is a building block. Can Luca be better than he already is? Absolutely. And Mark Cuban, in the past has talked about Luca's conditioning. He did get in better shape, and I still think there's room for improvement for him to be in even better physical shape. On top of that, is Luca capable of being a leader or being the leader that the Dallas Mavericks need him to be? We're going to have to wait and see. But obviously, there needs to be some retooling with this roster, possibly, some retooling in the front office. I'm not saying, Nico Harrison should be, looking, or trying to avoid, a call from Mark Cuban to possibly get a pink slip. Absolutely not. But there definitely needs to be some retooling within his organization. The Mavericks, from top to bottom, are not as talented as they were last year, but this team nonetheless is still too talented to be talking about. They can't even qualify for the play-in tournament in the Western Conference. There's no ifs, ands, or buts that Dallas should still be playing right now. But this team, they just I can't say that they fell apart after the Kyrie trade. I think the Kyrie trade really just exposed a lot of deficiencies with this team. And again, it starts at the defensive end of the court. They don't have the ability with this roster currently as far as being able to put the clamps on people coming down the stretch. And again, Luca needs guys to have the ability to play off of him. So that is something that the Mavericks are definitely going to have to address going forward. How did it come to this for the Mavericks? It's just one of those where it just never clicked after last year. And you figure, a big reason for that again, you know, you let Jalen Brunson go. And sometimes when a player leaves a team, he may not necessarily be the star player of a respective team, but he can still be the heart and soul. And from the outside looking in for me, I think Jalen Brunson was the heart and soul of that Dallas Mavericks squad. They never were able to replace him. And in a scenario, excuse me, like that, if there's a possibility of losing a Jalen Brunson, and that there are other teams around the NBA that want his services, and if that there are other teams that are willing to maybe overpay in regards to how much you feel that he is worth, well, guess what? You better have a plan B as far as what do you do if you allow him to walk out the door. Dallas never had a replacement for Jalen Brunson, and they're paying for it now. And they've paid for it all season long. So the question is, what is this team going to do? How are they going to retool this roster? How are they going to find a way to, build and tweak this roster around Luka Doncic? This is a very important summer for the Dallas Mavericks. You saw them make a transition several years ago after numerous years with Donnie Nelson Jr. running the front office. And of course, Rick Carlisle being the head coach. You come in with Jay Kidd and Nico Harrison. They got to the Western Conference Finals last year and life was good. But now this is a huge step back. And I think this is a huge wake up call for the organization. So this is a very important summer ahead for the Dallas Mavericks. Let's see what they can do to get things turned around as they try to avoid a second consecutive disappointing NBA season. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.